Okay, welcome everyone. For today's continue doing the Tao Te Ching translation. Today we will do chapter 31, 32, and probably 33. Okay, so as usual, our procedure will be raise your hand to read any translation you want to read, and then later on Amang and I are going to share our translation. Then we can have the discussion on the specific chapter. So let's start from chapter 31. Okay, Kwong, please.
Okay, so stanza 31, translation by Professor Moss Roberts. Weapons of war are omens of doom, to be loathed by every living thing, and shunned by those who keep the way. Presiding at court, the leader honors the left. Resorting to war, he honors the right. But weapons are never the leader's choice. Weapons of war are omens of doom, not to be used unless compelled. Above all, with mind and heart unstirred, to arms gave no glory, for to glory in arms is to sing and rejoice in the slaughter of man. And singers in praise of the slaughter of man shall not in this world gain their ends. Thus the left is for deeds that are blessed, the right is for deeds that bring death. To the left, the mirror, the minor commander. To the right, the chief general. Place for the rights to honor the dead. When the slaughter is great, let the leader come forth to keen for the slain, the victory won, to perform solemn rites in mourning the day.
Thank you, Kwong. So Catherine, please.
So this translation is from Lok Sang Ho. Fine weapons are ominous objects and are detested by all living things. For this reason, the man who follows the Tao will stay away from them when possible. The refined man respects life in his daily life. He follows the left. If he should resort to military force, he unavoidably destroys life. He follows the right. Weapons are ominous objects and are never the instruments of a refined person. If ever he cannot avoid using them, he must not make a big thing out of it. Even if he wins the war, he must not glorify the victory. He who glorifies military victories takes pleasure in killing. He who takes pleasure in killing will not win the support of the world. Auspicious events are symbolized by the left. Ominous events are symbolized by the right. The next in command should take the left seat. The chief in command should take the right seat. This is to say that a military victory should be treated like a ceremony to honor the dead. For those who kill, let us shed our tears upon them. Upon winning a war, let us pay tribute to those who die with the rites of mourning.
Thank you, Catherine. All right. No more. Okay, so let me share the translation. Okay, I hope you see the screen. All right.
Got it.
Okay, good.
Chapter 31, Honor the Left. Regarding war, it is not an auspice. Most things detest it. Those who follow the Tao would not stay with it, abide by it. The officer use the equipment on the left at regular times. They only employ the weaponry on the right in times of war. Weaponry is not auspicious equipment. It is not auspicious equipment for officers. It is only employed when there is no other choice. It is best to be tranquil and mild. Victory in a war is not moral. Those who consider victory as moral enjoy killing. Those who enjoy killing cannot achieve their aspirations in the world. Auspicious events are handled by the left. ominous events are handled by the right. The lieutenant general is positioned to the left for civilian duty. The major general is positioned to the right for military duty. That is to say that it is presided over as a funeral. Killing a multitude should be mourned with tears. Victory of the military should be presided over as a funeral.
Thank you, Amam. Okay. I think this one we can read side by side with Art of War. Okay. Basics talking about military operation. And it doesn't matter you are victory or you are defeated, it's always a bad thing. So the high score in the military is avoid the war. I think that's the message here. So here, the message is the tradition during that time, the officer, the general, the lieutenant general is on the left, which take care of the civilian duty. And the major general is on the right, who take care of the military duty. And the military duty should take it seriously. So doesn't matter the result of the military operation, killing, okay, always has some people die, and we should always take it serious with tears. AI, and even you are in the victory of the military should be presided as funeral. So it's no win, no so-called winner. Even you win, you just like previous chapter. If you were here last week, you talking about the result, right? If chapter 30, talking about achieve the result without arrogance, achieve result without boasting, achieve result without pride, achieve result only when there is no other choice, achieve result without coercing. Okay, so the purpose of military operation just to achieve the result. And whenever have people die, you should treat it with mourn with tears. Even the victory of military should be considered as a funeral. Another small thing I'd like to mention is here they have the word called 君子. Okay, I translate as the officer. Okay, if you read the Confucius Analect, you probably will see 君子 at least appear, I don't know how many times. Okay, Confucius Analect has only 10,000 characters. And the 君子, I have to guess, appear at least 20, 30 times. And in Confucius Analect, I preserved the pronunciation. I translated as 君子 because that's Confucius' moral agent. Okay, but here, since 君子 only appear once in the Dao De Jing, so I will take 君子as the officer, because a low-ranking officer. Okay, so or the military officer, this kind of position. In another way, I give it original facial meaning of this word, 君子. And then, so that's why sometimes you may see different translation on that. So that's it. And Amang, let's see what Amang want to say about it.
Thank you, Jason. And I have to thank you also for the additional translations we've done. They give this a richer context. Here we have the Tao Te Ching discussing war. Something that feels very out of place with most of the lessons that Laozi discusses, but would be of paramount concern for the young princeling who was his audience, who would be inheriting a state, ruling over it, and looking, excuse me, to expand his empire, as it were. This is, as we said before, right on the precipice of the Warring States period, and the Zhou dynasty has gone to hell. So at the beginning of this, the oldest of the texts that we translated was The Art of War. And that was a user manual for conducting warfare, and it was popular. And it had legs, and it probably would have been on the reading list of any young princeling who was being schooled by any sort of sage, any sort of teacher at the time. Confucius also discusses war, but he has a very moralistic bend on it that it should be avoided and is unnecessary if a ruler is a moral exemplar. That is his recipe for fixing things. Here you have in this passage Lao Tzu addressing these other two texts obliquely, but not so veiled, by one, making that reference to a junzi, which I was just looking to highlight in the text, but I moved on. And two, by discussing the ceremony or li of warfare. A major general stands here, a lieutenant general stands here. There is a pomp and circumstance and pageantry in the military. We still see that now, and that probably would have warmed Confucius' heart cockles to see things being done in the correct manner. But here you have once again an emphasis on the left. And now I'm going to veer completely out of the text into our own contemporary world where we have two terms, only one of which has really come down to us through the ages: sinister. Sinister is the sister word to dexter. Dexter indicating a right hand and sinister indicating a left hand. Left hand has been the devil's plaything. Left-handed students were beaten and taught to write with their right hand for centuries. This is an association we make subconsciously in the West with the left being morally inferior, awkward, uncomfortable. This is one of two times in the Tao Te Ching where, though it's not an identical association, the left is treated as sort of the lesser, and Lao Tzu elevates it. In chapter 79, there's a rather famous passage where he concludes, therefore, the sage holds the left side of the contract, but doesn't demand payment. This indicates an old tradition where contracts would be written up, snapped in half, and the left hand side went to the creditor, the right hand to the debtor. And he's talking about be that creditor and don't collect. Be that person who is loathed and make yourself unloathable, if I can actually turn a phrase. He's doing the same thing here, but he's talking about it in militaristic terms. And he's saying, yeah, this is a necessary evil, unfortunately. This is something you will have to do, but you should be treating it as gravely as it really portends that when you execute military missions, you are deploying people to kill other people, and therefore that should be top of mind, and it should be treated as if you were attending a funeral. It may have been necessary, but you best not take joy in it.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so let's have some discussion about, please focus on this chapter. Madeline, please.
Wow. Thank you both. This is a great translation. And I appreciated, Aman, everything you said about it. It does strike me that the Tao Te Ching is not saying war is so bad you should never do it. Be a pacifist, don't do anything. It has the same acceptance of it as an event, something that human beings do. But it just says, this is how you should respond to it. My question is much shallower than this. I noticed that the words weapons, the weapon and equipment were both used in this one. And I was wondering how those words compare with the word, I think it was earlier, it was the word is a spiritual tool. And I'm just wondering about the word tool, weapons and equipment, if they're at all the same or different or what. Thanks.
Thank you, Matter. Okay, so I think that's I don't know how important of this one, but I treat every single word important. Okay, so first, here, let me find the words. Okay, okay. The weaponry is not auspicious equipment. Okay, that's the word. 兵者不祥之器. Okay, so being this word, I translate as weaponry. Okay, it means soldier, means military, but here means weapon, right? So weapon is not auspicious. Qi, we talk about this word last week. We talk about 天下神器, the sacred vessel, or you want to translate the spirit, okay, spirit being. Okay, so this word is qi. Okay, so it's talking. So I translate, instead of translate as vessel, being, I translate as equipment. So here you talking about weaponry is not auspicious equipment. So I hope I answer, Madeline, answer your question about these two words. Okay, so qi means something tangible. So here I translate as equipment. So that's what. And another thing I forget to mention here is you may see a little bit different in different translation, is victory in a war is not moral. In Chinese here called 胜而不美. Okay, so 美, most of translation will translate as beautiful, okay, good. And here I translate I think in the entire Dao De Jing, I translate the word 美 as moral. I think during that time, this word means moral beauty. Okay. The reason I make this translation is usually the opposite word is 恶, which means evil. So I will see some people will translate beautiful and ugly, but I will prefer in this, not only this chapter, the entire Dao De Jing translation, I will use the 美, okay, which is on the surface means beautiful. I translate as moral because its opposite is 恶, which means evil instead of ugly. So that's a small note I'd like to talk about. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. The next one would be Huang, Catherine, and Nick.
Okay, so I would like to come back to what might seems to be a detail, but it's a very big illustration of cultural difference. Here in China, the left side is considered superior to the right side in normal circumstances, meaning not in war, because when the emperor is sitting on his throne, he faces south. And when he faces south, his right hand is on the west side and his left hand is on the east side. The east side is the side of the rising sun, and the left side in this disposition is the side of the setting sun. So that is why in Eastern Asia, the left side is considered as superior because it is the side of the rising sun when the emperor is sitting on his throne facing south. Meaning in all circumstances except in war, because in war is considered as an abnormal situation. So in an abnormal situation, everything is reversed. The right side become the honorable side, okay, the setting sun, okay. And it reminds a little bit of ancient Egypt, because in ancient Egypt, people are buried on the western side of the river Nile, Why? Because the sun is setting on the western side. Okay, so in a situation of war, it's a situation where you have a situation of death. So the western side, meaning the right side, in the Chinese case, okay, when the emperor is sitting south, sitting on his throne facing south, the western side is on the right side, meaning that war is a right-sided situation, if I may say so, meaning a situation of death. So it is normal that the place of honor would be on the right side. And I would like to come back a little bit on the fact that Taoism is not for ideology. Okay, it's not for ism precisely. It's a bit of an irony that we call it Taoism. But anyway, let's say the way, uh, because uh, it is not favoring war, of course, but it is not promoting, as Madeline said, I'm sorry, absolute pacifism, neither absolute pacifism, meaning that in certain circumstances, the right choice is to go to war, okay, even if it's not something that is favored as, let's say, as as the first choice. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwok. Catherine, please.
Yeah, I really appreciated in your translation that you pointed out the lieutenant who's on the left is in civilian duty and hence on the left, and the major general is on the right in military duty and hence on the right. Because I was curious, like, why one was on the left, one was on the right. So the parentheses you put in of one being civilian duty, one being military duty, really made that clear. So I really appreciated that. And also just as a quick question, so do you think this is the first time that using like you want to follow the mindset of the left, as in not declare glory after winning war, you want to treat it like a funeral? Is this the first time you think it was out there where they're like, yes, be like the left when you're in war?
You mean the first time in the
Well, the first time it was ever like written, or I mean, I don't know if that's a common thing.
I don't know if it's the first time because I didn't read all text. So
Oh, okay.
I have to read all text, then I can say that's the first time, but I don't. So I don't know. But
Okay.
but I will say this one is not an uncommon thinking. Okay, because we also read, Amang and I will also translate the Art of War. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And you will see Art of War, and you can see it has a similarity with Machiavelli's the Prince. Okay, there's this flavor, and both. I say both. I say both. Art of War and the Prince, they all have important concept. You don't use military unless it's necessary, but you need to have a military, but you don't use because especially in other war, always talking about if you fight 100 wars and 100 battles and you have won 100, it's not good. All right, the best way is to avoid have no war without wage a war or a battle. You can achieve your purpose. That's the high score, because everybody, as long as you have common sense, as long as you have a war that has this, it costs a lot on both sides. So I would say it's hard to say whether or not it's the first time, but it's not uncommon to think about this way. Not only China, also in Western thinking. Yeah, thank you. Next one would be Nick, please. Nick,
Yeah, sorry. Hi. Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'd like to just have a short comment on Madeline's question on this word. It appears 3 times in this text,
Yeah.
and it is the identical word that we saw 2 standards ahead. So the question is how to understand it. So here is uh, uh, the unique characteristic of Chinese language, which create words not like English or other Latin-based language, but a bit more like the old Greek, that it streams words together to express ideas. So the identical word qi, which appears 3 times here, and then 1 time 2 standards ahead, would go with the adjective. So then it will become a new concept, a new noun. So 2 standards earlier, it will go with shen qi, which means divine device. But here, if the device is used in military campaign, well, it's a weapon. If it's used in manufacturing, well, it's a machinery. If it's used, so you get my point. So, but the word is the identical one, and I thought that question was a very perceptive one.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, Nick talking about the words. Let me show you this word 气 right? Okay, 不祥之气 okay, and 兵者不祥之气，非君子之气 okay, so here I will translate the equipment, right? Okay, I will translate the equipment. Okay, equipment. Okay, so here, that's the reason I translate to equipment. Okay, so since Nick talking about the this word qi, let me go back to I think last time when we talking about 天下神器, is that the chapter? Oh, this word, right? Last time we talked about 天下神器. I think we have a long discussion about I translated the word is a spiritual being. Okay, if you were here last week, and we spent a lot of time discuss this one. After the meeting, I kind of start to review what we have discussed. I find out this translation at least have a 3 meaning, and all of them we should consider correct or make sense, right? First is if we translate as a sacred vessel, okay? So that means this word, okay, is sacred, okay? It's a tangible thing, but it's holy, okay? It's only you have the heavenly a mandate that you should be able to do it, not like use force to do it. You should be moral enough. You should have a high spiritual or high moral standard to get it. That's one way to read it. Another way, we will translate as a spiritual being. Read it spiritual as people's spiritual. So you talk about if you want gain the world, you want conquer the world, you should gain people's spirit, people's favor. Okay, that's another way you can read it. And the third way is the way Among and I decide to use this, which is the word is a spiritual being. That means it's not tangible, it's intangible. Okay, it's compared with regarding sins. Sins means tangible. So you can see they have the 3 different ways to translate. And then there's no way, it's hard to say which way is right, which way is wrong. But since we only can choose one, so we decide to use spiritual being. And I just like to mention is this being, okay, we translate same word as qi, which Nick mentioned. It has been used 3 times in this stanza, this chapter 31. So thank you. Joe, please.
Yeah, the translation in the chat, I only got up to 30, so I didn't get the chance to really kind of listen to you, dissect it, and I was a little bit late, so I apologize for that. The spiritual aspect, I think, is one of the interesting points when you're kind of approaching it, is that last week I talked a little bit about it, kind of being just, and it seems like there's a distinction here in this particular passage where the idea is obviously you're only responding when necessary. However, at the same time, there is no such thing as victory. There's no such thing as, so that's almost, it ends up at a spiritual level. And so that's deeper than I would say justice, because justice is proportional and it's a right response. And there's, while boasting or pride are mentioned in the previous chapter, I think that this is, kind of speaking to something deeper. I also think, the idea, I think what Quan already mentioned, is that it's also kind of, you can see the element of Wu Wei in this, in taking decisive action and responding accordingly. But I think ultimately what it's really kind of getting to is this idea that nobody wins in war. And so since nobody wins in war, everybody's loser and it loses, and that you're separated from the Tao itself just by engaging in war, that is almost a deeper and spiritual level, I would say, and not necessarily aligned to reasoning, I would say.
Thank you, Joe. Madeline, please.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for your comments. Quan, I appreciated what you said about the position of the emperor, because indeed the tradition is the West represents death. And I guess the good old emperor would be sitting under the noonday sun, kind of full of the mandate of heaven. This whole piece reminds me of Doug, who some of you know from these groups, white hair and beard theater guy. He had told me about a film that he saw, which is no longer available anywhere. I looked, made by an anthropologist, about two tribes, actually several tribes, somewhere in the South Pacific. Something would happen because they're human beings. Something always happens, and so two of the groups there would declare war on each other. There'd be a big call to battle. Everyone would get armed. Every morale would go up. There'd be chants. There'd be dance. The groups would meet on the battlefield. They'd charge with their weapons, and as soon as one person died, the war was over. And everyone would be incredibly upset, as if 1 million people had been killed, because one person symbolized everything for them.
Thank you, Madeline. Okay, so any other comment? Otherwise, we will move to chapter 32.
You little nasty motherfucker.
Good. Okay, we respond quickly.
I step away for a second. God.
He's waiting for you to disappear. So okay. So with chapters 20. Okay, let me see. Okay, 29, 30, 31. This 3 chapters is related to the military operation. So at this moment, we're done with military operation. So next chapter, chapter 32, which is 32. Yeah, it's not about military operation, but of course, it's a little bit political. If you want to think this way, that'll be fine. So let's read your own translation. Kwok, please.
Okay, so translation by Professor Moss Roberts, stanza 32. The way continues on unnamed, though in its unhewn rawness, low and humble, none in the realm can force it to serve. When lords and kings to this way keep 10,000 things as honored guests attend. When heaven and earth conjoin and shed sky mead, uncommanded the people share it fairly. But the advent of Rome brought names, and names meant mastering restraint. To master restraint, ensure survival. The ways a presence in the realm of man, as valley streams join rivers, then the ocean.
Thank you, Kwok. Joe, please.
Yes, I'll read the Jia Fufang. The Tao is forever undefined. Small though it is in the unformed state, it cannot be grasped. If kings and lords could harness it, the 10,000 things would come together and gentle rain fall. Men would need no more instruction, and all things would take their course. Once the whole is divided, the parts need names. There are already enough names. One must know when to stop. Knowing when to stop averts trouble. Tao in the world is like a river flowing home to the sea.
Thank you, Joe. Steve.
Right. And this is the DC Lao one. And it says, the way is forever nameless. Though the uncarved block is small, no one in the world dare claim its allegiance. Should lords and princes be able to hold fast to it, myriad creatures will submit of their own accord. Heaven and earth will unite, and sweet dew will fall, and the people will be equitable, though no one, and all the people will be equitable, though no one so decrees. Only when it is cut are there names. As soon as there are names, one ought to know that it's time to stop. Knowing when to stop, one can be free from danger. The way is the world as the river and the sea are to rivulets and streams.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, chapter 32.
Chapter 32, Knowing When to Stop. Tao is common and nameless. Although it is genuine, pull, and small, the world cannot subjugate it. If dukes and kings can hold on to it, all things will submit themselves. Nature harmonizes and rains sweet dew. People can self-adjust without government orders. A system starts by having names. As names are established, people know when to stop. Knowing when to stop, they can avoid danger. The Tao in the world is like the brooks from basins flowing into rivers and seas.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so first, a few things about the translation. Tao is common and the nameless. Okay, so this word 常, okay, we consistently translate as common, and then I know most of translation will translate as forever, eternal. Okay, because this word 常, okay, in Chinese, you can have two meaning. Okay, you can mean always, right? Forever, okay, because some texts use the word 恒, which means always, eternal. But we decide to translate this word, take a different meaning, which means common. So by changing this meaning, the Tao is not something absolute, something very high. It's something like in your daily life. So actually, they have the both way to interpret the meaning of Tao. So in our translation, we tend to consider Tao as a common life. So that's why we translate as Tao is common and nameless, because you cannot name. Okay, so another important word called Pu. Okay, most of people being in the section reading Dao De Jing will know the important concept of Wu Wei, which means non-action. In my opinion, Wu Wei non-action is about political teaching. Ask the ruler, the prince, practice Wu Wei, less bother. Okay? Don't bother people too much. This kind of concept. But for the personal cultivation, this word pu is important. Even it doesn't appear many times, but I think that's an important concept as the word pu. Before I keep the original meaning of pu, but right now I decide to translate as genuine. Okay, so the meaning of pu is uncarved word. Okay, so that's the raw word. So I think Professor Roberts' translation is rawness. Okay, so basically it's something uncarved, unpolished. Okay, so that's the model, usual model. Okay, it's not like refined. You should keep your originality. Okay, this kind of concept. So here talk about it's a small thing. If you keep this way, the word cannot subjugate it. Okay, so like this, even it's nameless, it's common, it's raw, but you know, you can nobody can conquer you. I think that's the teaching of this one. And the next one talk about the duke and the king, which means the prince. If hold this concept, everything will follow it. So will follow the Tao, and the people can self-adjust without government order. So basically talk about if, so last week we talked about so-called anachronism, okay, the Taoism anachronism. So basics, the ruler, the prince, you don't need to do too many things. You just have to keep the origin, okay, the rawness of yourself. And then this Tao, which is common and the nameless, will the people can self-adjust without government order. Okay, so just a common saying is, I get up when the sun rises, I start to work. When sundown, I start to rest. Who cares the government order? Okay, because that's nothing to do with government. The second part is interesting, talking about the system start by having name. Okay, so the first part, we talk about the utopian Taoism, which is anarchism. I think the second part start to talking about the society today, or you can say Confucius society, because you have name, because you have the system, you have an officer, you have a soldier, you have a government, you have administrator, so it start have the name. Okay, when the name established, people know when to stop. So in this way, Taoism teaching is not totally reject the Confucius teaching or Confucian system, society. Because in this society, okay, which is not Taoist utopian, you have name. Unlike a Taoism society is nameless. You have name, but what's the meaning of name? Unlike Confucius teaching, Confucius will talk about rectification of name. Confucius talk about the name is give you a standard. You should do the things, okay, do the job, do the duty. But Taoism talking about the name is that people know where to stop. In another way, the name is a boundary. So you should stop somewhere. Again, if you are the male, you should take care of the city. Okay, so that's your job. You should stop there. As the man of the house or the chief of a state, you take care of your state. Okay, that's your job. You should stop there. So then knowing when to stop, they can avoid danger. So everybody stop on what the name give you. Okay, so that sounds a little bit passive, but that's the Taoism solution to how to survive or how to live in a Confucian society. So the final is talking about the Tao in the world. It's like the brook from basin flowing into river and the sea. You can understand the situation. Just water flow, it's nature. You don't have to use force. Everything's supposed to be in this way. So that's the meaning of this chapter. So I stop here, and I know when to stop. So I stop here.
Thank you, Jason. And actually, if you'll let me share my screen, if you take down the translation, I have something I want to share in a moment. But I want to start with that our translation of Chang. When Jason, this is kind of the thunderbolt moment that got me very on board with this project, when Jason said Chang is not this elevated, ephemeral, eternal, grand thing. Taoism, if it's an ism, is not about the grand. It is not trying to tell you that there's some great power on high controlling all of your existence. It's here. It's everywhere. It's every day. It is so common. And when we translated that first chapter, Dao Ge Dao Fei Chang Dao, the Dao that can be named is not the eternal name, real name, elevated. All of those other translations I've ever seen try and take Chang and turn it into something it's not. It's not the common Dao. Dao Ke Dao Fei Chang Dao. The Dao can be Daoed, but not the common Dao, because it's everywhere. Names can be named, but not the common name, because it's everywhere. Chang was one of these key seminal moments for me that made me reevaluate a text I have been reading for well on 30 years. What I wanted to share, though, was what Jason was talking about. And Darren can probably check me on this, but I think the Cantonese pronunciation of po maybe or pu, maybe po.
No, it's po. It's
This
po.
is
It's
po.
po.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
po. Not po. It's po. Those are different words. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I bring
Po.
it up is because of this article, which I used in grad school, an intercultural interpretation of Kung Fu Panda. Many of you may have seen this movie and or at least been familiarized with it, but that character, Po, as he's named in the movie, is the embodiment of this concept, of this idea of Po, of simplicity, of authenticity, of being uncarved, unrefined, not subject to pomp and circumstance. And as anyone who knows the movie, he's the main character, he's the center of the story. Taoists absolutely love this idea because in what is genuine exists all potentiality. In the uncarved block, it can be anything: cup, bell, bowl, door, window. All potentiality exists within this unrefined, unaltered, authentic thing. And a Taoist who was carving a piece of wood would try and find what the thing wanted to be, what was its authentic self that was just aching to come out. This chapter, when we talk about knowing when to stop, that is what this is about. Finding the authentic self and then not gilding the lily, not adding to it, not trying to. Zachary asked which character? The panda. Po, which is just a reiteration of Po. That is who is the uncarved block. That is the unrefined, unaltered, undyed, unhewn cloth. And that article that I was sharing was actually a great article about how that movie synthesizes both the best of Eastern and Western cultures into a intercultural hybrid. And I think that's what we're kind of doing here. As a lot of English speakers reading the Tao Te Ching, we are hybridizing our understanding of the Tao Te Ching. That doesn't mean that we have the understanding of it, because as the text says, those who know don't speak, and those who speak, they don't know. So if we try and pretend like this is it, this is what it says, we're missing the mark. It's got many, many, many layers to unpack. That's why I've been reading this for 3 decades. And I always find a new layer to unpack. And when Jason presented Tao as everyday, as the often, as the common, as the here and now, and not elevated thing that so many of my translations of this text try to make the Tao, it clicked. It made me go, oh yeah, we've got a real translation here that I feel like it captures some of that, some of that authentic, unrefined, ungilded truth that Lao Tzu was trying to impart with this text.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so Joe, please.
So I basically have more of a question, because I know that Jason, you and I have had discussions in the past, how there are remnants of legalism in the Tao, and so how do you kind of reconcile this particular passage with this idea of legalism, with the idea that obviously overgoverning, and essentially minimizing a minimal amount of regulation, if you will, to control your populace, as opposed to legalism, which is actually obviously meant to enforce the state's rule to the point where people are too afraid to act.
Okay, I think that's a difficult question, and I don't think I should consolidate this chapter with legalism. Okay, because I don't see the way to consolidate. Okay, but in general, legalism, the way legalism read it, Dao De Jing, is in the way consider Wu Wei as me, as a king. Okay, I do nothing. Okay, I disappear from the the people, but I have my officer doing all the job. I have the law speak for me. Okay, so the key difference, I'm not specifically talking about this chapter, but in general concept between legalism, I talk about legalism based on the Han phase, this kind of legalism. Basically, the key difference is Taoism. You can see when we talk about duke and king, okay, it also includes all the prince or the government officer. Okay, but in legalism, when they talk about king, talking about ruler, we're talking about me, one person, okay, the emperor, okay, the king, okay, the lord, okay, and the people, not the people, the officer, other people, minister, general, everybody, they are others, okay? So in another way, the words only speak to one person, okay? The king, the lord, the ruler, that's it. I think that's the general change on that. So in another way, what do you mean Wu Wei? What do you mean not show off? That means I hide it from the public. I don't do anything. I have my people, my minister doing the job. So I think that's the key difference.
Okay.
All
No,
right.
I appreciate that. So And yeah, just I mean, as far as the passage itself, I mean, this is one of my favorites. I'll just say for a lot of different reasons. When it's just basically when you take a concept and you continue to reduce it into to a point where it's no longer meaningful. And it's no longer, it kind of can be even, it's not even recognizable. So in language, I think that that's actually, you see that done quite often. People will use words in a way where they're no longer meaningful. And you're taking a concept and you're breaking it into parts. And you can even say this as far as an organizationally concerned. I'll just say really quickly. When you're breaking things into parts, like essentially an organization into many layers of governance, as you were talking about a moment ago, Jason, just you were talking about within governmental circumstances, but I'm talking about it more within, even a corporate setting, that it becomes dysfunctional. There's no longer communication that is actually able to between the top layer and the individuals that are doing the work. So for me, it's, I think breaking things up into parts is actually one of the more interesting parts of the Tao, is that kind of knowing when to stop is, that's basis of wisdom in my thought. So anyway, I mean, I'd like to hear everybody else's thoughts on that.
Thank you, Joe. We have Kwang, Darren, and Yuzi. Kwang, please.
I would like to say that this stanza, for me, is interesting because it has a link to both, not both, but the three dimensions of Taoism, Confucianism, and legalism. And I try to explain what I mean. Because it was talking of the advent of own brought names, and names man mastering restraint. To master restraint ensure survival. Once again, the three attitudes, I would not even speak of doctrines or theories, okay? I would say attitude, because I have the pretension to say that I was going to say any Eastern Asian person, but I wouldn't really limit myself to any Chinese person. Any Chinese person has quite spontaneously, because of the control matrix, a Taoist attitude, a Confucianist attitude, and a legalist attitude. And it has to do with names. Because in the case of legalism, to start with what I consider as the lowest level of infinite awareness, in the legalist attitude, you don't have to think, you don't have to cultivate your infinite awareness. You just follow the letters of the law, okay? If you do that, you would be punished. If you do this, you would be rewarded. And contrary to what most people would say, I say that the common people, if you have a true legalist king, they are very happy, because that true legalist king would make the laws known to everyone. Okay, so the law is clear. If you do that, you will be punished. If you do this, you will be rewarded. You will be informed. And one of the anecdotes, that when the Duke of Qin established legalism in his kingdom in the 4th century BCE, the minister tried the people by writing on a paper, on a bamboo slip. If a man moved his post from here to there, he would be given a golden coin, okay, a gold coin. Nobody believed that, okay? It's such a simple task, and you would be rewarded with a golden coin. Wow. And after 2-3 days, there was a courageous man moving the post from here to there, and he got his golden coin, right? So it's only a trick to make people trust that the law is the law. If you follow the law, you wouldn't be punished. If you follow the law, you won't be rewarded. If you follow, in the sense that if you do this and the law predict that you will be punished, you will be punished. If you do that and the law predicts that you will be rewarded, you won't be rewarded. Okay, so that's names for legalism. But names for Confucianism is a little bit more complex in the sense that you would have to learn the ritual, the etiquette, the right manner to speak, the right manner to behave in each situation, and so on. Because if you want to be a gentleman, you have to learn poetry, you have to learn history, you have to learn philosophy, okay, and blah, blah, blah. And it's part of names too, okay, because it's a lot of names. But it's more complicated. It's not only if you do that, you will be punished, or you do this, you will be rewarded. It's a little bit more complex in Confucianism. And there is also a certain overture to infinite awareness, okay? Because a gentleman is aware of his mind. And if he's aware of his mind, he would be aware of his behavior even more spontaneously. And now the Taoist attitude, meaning that we know that we need names, okay? But I read the last two lines of Professor Roberts' translation. The ways of presence in the realm of man. The way is a presence in the realm of man, as valley streams join rivers, and the rivers then join the ocean. Okay, so the Taoist attitude would focus more on infinite awareness in the sense that, for sure, living in a human situation in a civilization with its history, its philosophy, and its customs, you wouldn't have to learn names. But as the first stanza of the Tao Te Ching said, the name that can be named is not the timeless name or the forever name, right? So it's focused more on the infinite awareness from where you will be more aware of the name, either from the Confucianist attitude, meaning rituals, philosophy, history, and complex relations, or the more simplistic legalist position, meaning if you do this, you will be punished. If you do that, you won't be rewarded. So paradoxically, legalists can be very simple, which is one of the invitation for Taoism. And I stop by saying that Taoism, at the high level of interpretation of infinite awareness, is very encompassing. But at the lower level of inviting to more humility, to the yin side of life, not to put yourself forward, but to be in the side of the mountain receiving the less light, well, it's a choice. It's an ideology for me of a smaller life. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwong. The name, the word name is, I think this name is important in all school in the ancient Chinese philosophy. And they all talk about name, except Tao. Tao talk about nameless. So Confucius and legalism have a different understanding or different teaching about name. So okay, so only Taoism is kind of talking about Tao is nameless. So that's one thing. Thank you, Kwok, to have some detailed explanation. Derek, please.
So a couple of things. So I noticed the third. This is the less important thing first. So I noticed the third last character of your Chinese text is different than mine. So yours says, hang on, where is it? It's I think yours says you in Cantonese. So that's and.
Which one?
the third last character.
So that's yu. Okay.
I'm trying to find okay, here it is. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. You. What is that in Mandarin? How do you say that in Mandarin?
Yu. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay, similar. Okay. And then but the one I have is the Chinese text I have, which is the one Derek Lin translation and elsewhere too, is you, so it's at. Hang on, how do I
What's the word?
it's the third last character is you, so it's in Mandarin it's wu at.
Yu. Okay.
Yeah. You in Cantonese and wu in Mandarin, yeah.
Okay. I know what you are talking about.
Yeah.
Is this word
You or wu in Mandarin.
uh
Yeah, with the fong and then the
this word, right?
I can't, it's too small. Hang on one sec. I can't read it. No, it's I don't think it was that
I know. No, it's found this word.
yeah, there, it's that one. Yeah, you yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
does that make a difference, do you think? I mean, they are different words, so I don't know if that but
Yeah,
I mean
it make difference. Okay. It make difference.
okay.
Okay. So let me explain. I hope it's not too detailed, or since you mentioned this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a two way to talk about this, right? One is the easy way. That's what I'm doing, which is not exactly same as what the Chinese word, or if you insist use this word, right? That means the basin, okay, the water in the basin flow into river and the sea. Another
Right.
way to talking about it's like river flow to the basin, 川谷, right? Same as Jiang, the larger stream, okay,
Yeah.
river flow to the ocean. So, okay, one way to look at it is one metaphor. That means the water in the basin, okay, the water flow to the ocean and the basin. Another way to look at it is two pair, right? The stream flow to the basin and the river flow to the ocean. I think that's the difference. Probably I should change it to a different translation because exactly should be in this way. 川谷之于江海. That means stream to the basin, river to the ocean. I think that's so. It doesn't change the entire meaning of the sentence, but if I want to be more picky, that's the right way to do it. Yeah, thank you to mention it.
Okay. But did you get the alternate text from somewhere else, or
There's many alternatives. To be honest, I'm not so careful
okay.
different texts. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I know there's so many different versions, so I'm not sure if like
yeah.
and you know you can always change it, Jason. People have done that for thousands of years, so you can just follow the tradition of just changing the text when you feel like
there's
it.
many versions, and some people are more serious. Like Kwang, I believe he's more serious on different version, more aware. I don't. Okay, I just whatever version available, I just put in. I just make sure I try to include most of the version, but I can't. That's it. So
okay, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it is. Oh, go ahead.
I do want to point out to Darren the yue the first translation or choice that we used. That is actually from the Mao Dong translation or text.
I see. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And I guess it kind of sound similar, the words, so I don't know. But anyway, so the main point I wanted to bring up was regarding the translation of hang on, I'm trying to find your text again. Here it is. Okay. Your second last line in your in the text that you have on the screen. So yeah, this one. Yeah, or in the Chinese, I mean, specifically. So the whole line in Chinese. So I'll just read what you say, and then I'll read the other way that people have understood it. So you guys say a system starts by having names. As names are established, people know when to stop. Knowing when to stop, they can avoid dangers. Okay, so this is interesting because you sort of agree with Moss Roberts, for instance, and others that that's the way to interpret it, what it's saying regarding names. But then another set of interpreters, including Derek Lin and Ursula Gwynn, and others, use understand this another way. So I'll read Derek Lin's version, but this is sort of another general way of seeing it. So he says, in the beginning there were names. Names came to exist everywhere. One should know when to stop. Knowing when to stop, thus avoiding danger. So, like, hang on. Okay, Ursula Gwynn maybe has let me just try to find hers if I can. She sort of brings a certain aspect to it too. Okay, yeah, she brings out even more clearly. So Ursula Gwynn's translation is to order to govern is to begin naming. When names proliferate, it's time to stop. If you know when to stop, you're in no danger. So the idea, so the way you guys understand this is that names tell us when to stop. And I feel like Derek Lin and Ursula Gwynn's translation is about the danger of like knowing when to stop doing this naming business. Like if we have too many names, that actually puts us into danger. Like there are things that we shouldn't go too far with just like trying to name and identify everything and pinning things down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
like so
yeah.
that's the thing that they're focusing on stopping, and whereas you guys focus more on like how rules help us stop doing certain things. So I don't know. I just wondering what people's views are on this because it does seem like to be a divide in how to interpret these few lines in this chapter.
Okay, I got the point. Okay, so I start to doubt it, which way would be better. Okay, so since the original text has no subject, so we really don't know. But I will agree. Uh, Derek Lin's translation or other translation, like if we take another way is to take this line as a warning, okay, to the governor, okay, to the prince, right?
Yeah.
You start to have a name, okay?
Yeah, right.
You have many names, then you should not stop naming too much,
Right.
something like this, right? And
Yeah.
you keep naming, then you cause problem. Then that means you
Yeah.
become egoism. You have all this name, right? That's one way to read it, right?
Yeah.
I would not say it's wrong, but I will prefer doing our way because the word "pu," I always see this word "pu" is try to teach your person, okay, not necessary. When I say a person, it's including the ruler as well as people, because that's the way you need to keep your originality. So, well, I still put the question mark on that.
Yeah, I mean
Thank you. Okay.
the actual Chinese is quite vague, so it doesn't. I think it could go either way. So yeah, I'll just
Yeah,
leave
you
a
can
question
go
mark
either
too.
way
Yeah.
because the most crazy text about this is unlike Confucius analect, right? They have this Confucius said something to somebody. Okay, so you know the background, you know who is Confucius, you know Confucius you living on certain time. So you have a limited room to interpret. But here you don't know. You just burst out the word and without subject, without audience, and then so they have many ways to read it. So anyway, thank you to bring up, and I just have to say at this moment I don't have good answer for this, and since I have no good answer, then I assume
I'm going to offer an answer because I do absolutely understand Derek Lin and Ursula Le Guin's interpretations here, but there is something I like about ours, which is it doesn't ask for an erasure of naming. It understands the human convention to categorize, to name, to give things identity that we can understand. What our translation kind of says here is that As names are established, then people know when to stop. Names give people a boundary, which they can then use to stop wondering. Is that a cat? Is that a dog? What is that? That's a cheetah. It's got paws like a dog. You don't have to worry yourself into knots and circles trying to find new names for new things. It's probably a mammal, and it's probably more a cat than it's a dog, even if it doesn't hit every box is checked. That's one of the things I like about our translation. Whereas the Derek Lin and Ursula Le Guin, they're more an indictment of the very act of distinguishing, which is an all too human act. And those all too human people are the subject, quote unquote, in our opinion here, that when you give names, people, not the sage, but people now have an understanding of where to stop, where to take those boundaries and go, that's enough.
Can I just
So
say one
that-
quick, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one quick thing about this, and then I see there's a lot of hands, so we should probably go on. But so I was, just this happens when I stare at the Chinese too long. Sometimes I just sort of start seeing things other ways. So I'm looking specifically at the first four characters here. So in Cantonese, it's Ti Zai Yao Ming. So in the beginning there, so you guys say a system starts by having names. I think like maybe this is only something that happens when you look at it for too long, but like you can also sort of see these four characters as suggesting something else, which is that it's with names. It's not by a system. It's like with the appearance of names, a system sort of appears. And then the warning would be to not go too far with these names. We should know like when to stop this. Because, and then this ties in with the very last line, because the Tao is like, is like rivers flowing into the sea and, whatever. So because it is, it's not, because it's not like words forming systems. When we start naming things, that's when the system starts coming up. But the Tao, the reality, the underlying reality is deeper than that. It's beyond those words, right? Because we know from the very first line of the Tao Te Ching. So yeah. So anyway, that I think that might be. Well, this will be more of the Ursula Le Guin and Derek Lin's ways of looking at it. But yeah, it's just the idea. It's a warning about names because the Tao is, beyond names. As the very first line of this very chapter actually also says. But yeah, anyway.
Okay, so thank you. But again, because I think another reason is I do see 知, the title, okay, knowing when to stop is an important message. Another reason is I try to contrast Taoism teaching and the Confucianism teaching. Taoism teaching like to talk about when to stop, okay? That's why I will say everybody should know when to stop. Not only the government, the ruler, also everybody know when to stop. Confucius is different. Confucius talking about stop, but he only stop on the perfect situation, so-called 止于至善, stop at most good, or you will say stop at sunum bonum. Okay, so the best good, the best thing. Okay, so that's a different attitude. Okay, in Taoism teaching, there's no perfect situation. You should know when and when to stop. So, okay, thank you for the great discussion. And we have user, I don't know what's your name. You want to tell us what's your name, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is George. Thank you, Jason, for having this. This is my first time here.
Thank you.
With regards to stanza 32, I think on Darren used the term warning. I would agree with him. I think stanza 32 is a warning. A warning to what? Well, I feel, and it starts with the way I'm using the DC Lao translation. The way is forever nameless. And I agree with you. At the end, it ends with a metaphor. in terms of this returning, this reunion with the oceanic experience. What I mean by that is that, for me, this whole stanza alludes to the tendency for the undifferentiated to become differentiated, and for the differentiated to return to the undifferentiated, for the formless to move towards form, and for form to return to formless, for the nameless to become name and to return to nameless, for the irrational to move towards rational and for it to return to the irrational, for chaos to move towards cosmos, to order, and to return to chaos. So it's almost about an ineffable integrity, this wholeness that we cannot describe only until we cut it apart, until we make it into pieces. But again, it's a warning. It's almost like saying an atom has these protons and electrons. There are no such things as protons, electrons, yet we subscribe to those propositions. Those are ultimately illusions. Just like there's a difference between you and I. There is no such thing as you and I. Yet it is society and consciousness that constructs this separateness. But there is no separateness. So it seems to me that stanza 32 is a warning. It alludes to this tendency for wholeness to take form, but ultimately wholeness has no form.
All right, thank you, George. Okay, thank you very much for your interpretation and share with DC. I think the DC Lao's interpretation. Joe, please.
Yeah, just really quickly, I think that there have been a lot of great comments, but I especially appreciated Kwan's especially when he was talking about it in terms of how legalism is almost a set of rules to a point where there's actually no room for any type of inference at all. Like you're not inferring about anything. It's so if you were to look at it as more within the Confucius framework, and I'm using the word framework specifically here, it is more about there is an awareness as to how to apply the concepts of Confucianism, even though it is ritualistic. There is a time and place for applying these these ideas, and so that requires wisdom per se. So, and that's kind of a wise culture. And I almost get the impression in a way that and Kwan can comment on this, is that almost this is coming back to my previous comments, almost in comments last week, where this is almost like kind of a spiritual aspect of it. Kind of like it's not even necessarily like a framework per se. It's just about being. So, and so that there's a little bit, that the idea is it's much more fluid as to what is the right action. And so there's an element of wisdom that exists within Confucianism, within Taoism, that wouldn't exist in a legalist type of society, because you wouldn't even necessarily be allowed to think. I mean, it's an interesting approach, because when you think about rules-based systems often take away your ability to reason, and it takes away your ability to really apply the right judgment in a particular circumstance. So it makes these rules almost universal, which is obviously problematic, where you're off, and you're just, sometimes it just doesn't apply. So it takes away judgment. Anyway, I thought that was a really interesting way of kind of looking at this, because when you continue to name things, and Madeline put an interesting comment in the chat, with names equivalent to laws. And it is true that you're continuing to name things to a point where there's constraints that you can you're no longer making a decision. I do like Amon's comment though, because I've always looked at words as boundaries. Like it creates a boundary when you speak about it in terms like, and there's this idea of categorization and from that point on. So even if something like, the internal concept becomes a spoken concept, and then there's a boundary that's associated, like in the beginning was the word. So anyway.
Thank you, Joe. Kwang, please.
Okay, yes. I would like to say that stanza 32 is at the end of the first half of the Tao Te Ching, right? Because the Tao Te Ching is divided from stanza 1 to 37, that's about the Tao, and stanza 38 to 81, the Te. 32 is at the end of Tao. So I agree with the fact that it's a kind of last warning, okay? Now we are at the end of the part treating of formlessness. And when we will start of Te, which can be translated as virtue or power, we will more enter into the practical actions. So it's a last warning in the sense that, and I would like to read again the first line of stanza 32. The way continues on unnamed. Okay, the way is that infinite awareness that will always be there. And I read the last two lines. The way is a presence in the realm of man as a valley, stream join rivers, then the ocean. Okay, so I think it was George who mentioned that it's a reminder that ultimately we will go back to the infinite ocean of infinite awareness. But meanwhile, we still in this life of forms. And I would like to say that when we are speaking of legalism, Confucianism, and Taoism, very strangely, it reminds me of the metaphor used by Friedrich Nietzsche in And So Thus Speak Zarathustra, because in that book, you have the metaphor of the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel is the beast of burden, okay, the beast of burden that will receive the laws, okay, legalism. You do that, you will be punished. You do this, you will be rewarded, okay, that's the camel. After that, you have the lion, that's Confucianism. In the sense that Confucianism accept the king's game, okay, because the Confucianism is the king's game, okay. You have rules, you have rituals, but you also have a kind of rebellion, hence the lion. You have history, you have philosophy, you have debates, you have reflection on when to apply this ritual or that ritual. So it's not only the camel, it's the lion. And finally, Taoism is the chine, okay, the creative chine that precisely understand that but the advent of rule brought names, and names meant mastering restraint. To master restraint ensure survival. So the child has enough infinite awareness to understand the king's game, but at the same time, he's not obsessed by the king's game. He remember that the way is a presence in the realm of man, and valley streams join rivers, then the ocean. So when I say that there is a smaller interpretation of Taoism, the smaller interpretation is an invitation, at least for me, to a smaller life, okay? The invitation to the yin side, to the side where there is not a lot of sunlight. It's an ideology for me if it's uninterpreted at the smaller level. But as at the bigger level, it means that you are going through the legalist phase, meaning the camel, But you also go through the Confucianist phase, meaning the lion, and finally, to be complete, to go to the last phase of being a creative child. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. That's a great comparison with Nietzsche's the spoke Zarathustra, the camel, lion, and the child. It's legalism, Confucianism, and Taoism. I think that's a great, I would say, comparison. Thank you. Zach, please.
Hi there. I just wanted to kind of comment on this discussion around, I guess basically like what standpoint the Tao takes, or I guess more ask a question than comment. So there seems to be a little bit of a like debate or healthy discussion around whether or not the Tao is about basically saying these distinctions themselves are illusions, and really there is nothing but the whole. But then I noticed Amon's comment seemed to be more in the chat. He says, yes, but if you can hold distinctions and non-distinct concepts simultaneously, then you're seeing the Tao in a much larger way. And to me, that points to more of it's not one or the other, it's both. And I recently read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. This is coming from the Zen tradition, obviously. And I just wanted to read this passage, and if anybody, I'm pretty new to Taoism, so I'm curious how Taoist thought kind of differs, if anything, from this kind of distinction of what we're talking about here. That's actually how the book starts. He says, when you sit in the full lotus position, your left foot is on your right thigh and your right foot is on your left thigh. When we cross our legs like this, even though we have a right leg and a left leg, they become one. The position expresses the oneness of duality, not two, not one. This is the most important teaching, not two and not one. Our body and mind are not two and not one. If you think your body and mind are two, that is wrong. If you think that they are one, that is also wrong. So I'm curious if this is more or less the Taoist understanding as well, and if not, how it differs from this. And I apologize if this takes us too far away from this individual passage.
Actually, I don't think it does. Jason, give me a minute and a half to tackle this. First of all, to your first question about how Taoism and Zen Buddhism or Chan Buddhism relate, one of my favorite professors, a gentleman named Edward Slingerland, writes a lot about Taoism. And one of the things he said was Zen is just Taoism in Buddhist drag. So it really was a synthesis with the heavier emphasis coming from the Taoist. A lot of what you'll read in Suzuki, and especially the Japanese Zen tradition, has that strain of Taoist thought deeply embedded in sort of the substrata of it. There are distinctions, but they're minor. As far as how it relates to this and the nature of names and what I put into the chat, my grandson is about to turn 3. And this is an interesting age because 3 years old, you have words, you have names, you have categories. The world is starting to slot into your understanding of that is this, that is that. His mother, my daughter, told me the other day that every time she tries to call her mother, she picks up the phone and says, "Hey, Siri, call mom." And he rails, "No, that's my grandma. That's not mom. That's my grandma." He is in the phase where the names are so concrete, he hasn't got the room to accept that maybe the name grandma is appropriate for you, but the name mom is appropriate for your mother because that's how this works. His categorization will develop. This is how we all navigate life. We have to. We have no other way of navigating life because we're humans. I call you Zach because That's the name you have on the screen and you go by. If I want to refer to Joe or Quan, I would need to use their name as opposed to a lengthy description of Homo sapien in the screen that is down to the right of me, but is more Caucasian than me, with a nice ceiling fan in the background. By the time we start trying to universalize too much in conversation, we lose the thread. And that's why we do need these distinctions as humans. At the same time, we do need to realize at that ultimate level, like Juan said, we start without those distinctions and we will end without those distinctions. My grandson, 2.5 years ago, couldn't distinguish grandma from granddad, from mom, from dad, but he could look and go, that person and that person. I like that person. I like that person more. That's the person who's always making me like get clean, but they also feed me. He wasn't trying to categorize. He was living in a non-named existence. And there is a peacefulness that comes from that. There's also a lot of confusion and a lot of fear. And what you get by going through the phases of being nameless to having names to returning to nameless is the invitation to lose the fear of that uncertainty, of that distinction. That, I believe, is the deep lesson that's at work here. And it's a hard one because most humans need the either or. We must have that dichotomy. It's got to be this or that. And that's why, all apologies to Darren, Derek Lynn, and Ursula Gwynn, I like our translation better because it kind of blurs over the need of that dichotomy and says, no, names are fine. People need them. It gives them boundaries. That's good. But stop there and stop trying to figure out if grandma is also mom, is also, sister, is also aunt, because you're going to just spin yourself in circles trying to get all these categories right.
Right. Thank you, Aman. Let me directly respond Zach's comment on the Suzuki. I think that's very important to talk about the difference. When you talk about Suzuki, actually it's Suzuki's version of Zen. Okay, and the Zen is a branch of Buddhism. And then when we talk about Buddhism, we are talking about Mahayana Buddhism, and which is different than Theravada Buddhism, which Taoism doesn't know anything about Buddhism. Okay, just one minute. So I think it's very important to, it's your way to understand. They say, oh, they are talking about the same thing, but in another way, we should know they are different idea, different voice. So I'm not going to comment they are the same or not the same. They just have different voice, and just like Amon's opinion and my opinion, are they the same or different? Could be the same, but it's different voice from different person, different philosopher. Let's put it this way. So we probably can stop here for today, and then unless I will stop the recording now.